And a good friend of mine asked me a question: how is it, Antonio, that there's structure underneath these paintings that you do, that you fill with flowers or other elements on top? And I started to think, okay, well, which painting have I done where that is the most apparent, the most obvious? Um, and I found one. And once again, going back to this moment of, I believe it was 2003, 2002, where there was I had a patron. His name was Walter Lelix. And Walter, for the most part, really liked a lot that I was doing, a lot of the research that I was doing on Leonardo da Vinci and medieval work, etc. And at one point, he said, I'd like for you to do me a painting with a lot of flowers. He loved flowers. And I agreed to it, and I was somewhat uncertain how I was going to incorporate a very non-stylized flower, in other words, a more realistic flower, into a painting. And at that time, I was dealing with the question of wanting to find out that moment of life. Where and at what point does life actually start? And I have different responses to that, but at that moment, in reference to the painting that my client, patron, and friend was wanting, I said, I'm going to incorporate a structure of what I think is the moment of when life starts, with his desire for wanting flowers. So what I did was I created a graph. It's a graph of copulation for the most part. And I did it in a small painting, just like I did. In fact, I'm building a whole vocabulary where the structure underneath the paintings that I've been doing for the past 20 some odd years is underneath. And so this one is this graph here. I hope you can hear me. And as you can see, there's two parts to it, and that's actually a scene of copulation. And essentially it's the idea that generation is born of procreation or copulation. And you can see that there's a tiny little figure there that results in a baby. And of course, one is the male, one is the female. But this particular graph is underneath a lot of paintings. And so what I did, in order to explain, since these videos are all about explaining the work, and ultimately I want to get to where I explain other artists' work, but for now I want to do this. I also did another graph here just to show you a little bit further of what I'm talking about. And let me see, can you see that? Yeah. So if you can see this is what I just showed you in a painting. I said it's generation from procreation or copulation. And I wanted to paint the painting at this moment here, where the actual sperm makes his way on into the to the cervix and to find the ovum and create. So I painted the painting, and this is what I came up with real quick. Sorry about the video. I'll get better and better about handling these videos, but for now, stay with me. So this is the painting that I did. And essentially, you see, this whole thing right here, this entire thing becomes the female vagina, essentially. And this part right here is the glans, which is, well, the head of the male organ. And this becomes the sperm, and the sperm goes and makes its way on into I took artistic license to create something that obviously doesn't exist, but it takes the form of it, to where this flower that's sort of gently flowing becomes the cervix. But that was the way where I was able to incorporate all of these flowers. So in my idea of what this is the whole inside of the female is nothing but these gorgeous, beautiful flowers. And so I did this painting, and the client absolutely loved it, and I loved it. And it got to I got to use an element that I hadn't used completely before, because I had never done flowers like this before, and this was actually the very first time. And so I continued to explain a lot of these pieces because there are elements in my work that are decorative, and I've said that many times already. And I do think that there's a big difference between work that is strictly decorative and work that has more symbolism and more structure underneath. Both things are art. Both things are art. Whether the artist is producing work that is mass produced and being created just for the sake of color, it's still art, as is the work that many other artists are doing that have a concept behind it, that have structure like mine does, etc. I wouldn't say that there's a way to separate them right now. I know that we use terms like conceptual and this and that and all sorts of other terms, but they're all valid. They're both valid. But for me personally, I like the idea that the person that is going to be looking at a painting for a long time will be able to see that there's more structure underneath this gorgeous, beautiful arrangement of color.